All right, hello everybody, welcome back to another video. In today's video, we are reacting to a debate that I just had, this time with a leftist. I don't usually debate leftists, but I thought that this one was, it was something, and I think that it explains why the left is losing in so many ways, and why people like, I don't know, Fuentes are gaining ground, because so many people on the left are simply insufferable, and they deny basic reality. To do so, by the way, for example, in this video, my interlocutor will debate or will deny rather that black people commit more crime proportionally speaking. That is an insane claim to deny. And to deny it evinces an insecurity on your part. In other words, you believe that if you admit that black people commit more crime, proportionally speaking, then so many scary things follow. I don't know, maybe race realism or white supremacy. I don't think that. I think that we, as people on the left, maybe they don't consider me that, I'm a liberal. I think that we can admit facts and we can construct our worldview on the basis of those facts, on the basis of those commonly understood truths, and running away from them just makes us look bad. So in this debate, they deploy a number of bad faith tactics, muting, gish galloping, and all around just forming bad arguments. I will say at some points I come across a little bit, I don't know, rude perhaps, but I had been watching these people for about 15 minutes now. I know their style. They mute, they talk over, they insult. You'll see that happen here. Just know though, guys, I'm not racist. I am making this argument, hopefully for the good of the left or the liberal side, such that we may see reason once again. We may understand that we can acknowledge realities, we can acknowledge facts, and we can still make a good case for why you shouldn't be racist or white supremacist or far right or whatever. But without further ado, let's get into this debate and let's hear it. I went under the pseudonym Mark in this debate.
Can you hear me?
Yeah. What do you disagree with on the background? Oh, age and pronouns?
I'm 22 and he, him.
Okay, what do you disagree with on the background?
I disagree that white privilege exists, and I would like to hear the reasons why it does.
And by the way, apologies for the bad mic. I was using some AirPod Maxes, which you would think that they would have a better mic, but unfortunately not.
You would like, sorry?
I would like to hear the reasons why white privilege exists.
Go for it.
So, white privilege exists because we live in a world that's predicated on white supremacy. We live in a world where white supremacy has permeated throughout every aspect of our lives.
And I want you to notice, by the way, when she's making her arguments, when she makes assertions without a basis and when she actually provides some sort of evidence. She provides 2 or 3 pieces of evidence in this tirade. The rest of them, like those previous 2 statements, are mere assertions. You can't say white privilege exists because we live in a white supremacist society. You have to tell me why we live in a white supremacist society. If not, then the claim and the conclusion are vacuous.
We live in a world in which white folk are treated better than every other group of people.
Another baseless assertion.
We call the West progressive when we call the rest of the world regressive. We call them.
And I also don't know who we is. We call the West progressive and we call everyone else regressive. Who? Like, did you do polling to see whether most people in the West think that? Did you break it down by race? Are black people also, upholding white privilege? It just doesn't really make any sense at all. These arguments are so bad. We have to drop this white privilege idea. The reality is whites are disadvantaged in a myriad of situations. They're disadvantaged in college admissions. They're disadvantaged in law school admissions, med school admissions, versus virtually every admission into any area of higher study, from college upward. And so to pretend as though it isn't the case that, black people get into law schools with lower LSATs is to deny basic facts. And I say this in here. You can look at lsd.law. You can look at, but of course they mute me, so you don't hear me. You can look at lsd.law. You can look at law school transparency. You can look at LSAC data, which is the Law School Admissions Council. Black people both score lower on the LSAT and they get in with lower LSAT scores. That's not deniable. And these things matter a little bit more than baseless assertions like we live in a white supremacist society.
The white majority when in fact white people are the global minority. There are more people of color than there are white people anywhere else in the world.
And even that, we call white people the majority when in fact they're the global minority. It's because we're speaking within the domain of the United States. I don't think that one's too complicated to follow.
Now, when it comes to here in the United States specifically, Mark, are you in the United States?
Oh, yeah, sorry.
Yes. So, white supremacy is a huge issue here.
You can hear I was zoning out a little bit, admittedly, because there was just, a lot to take in. There's so many hard facts being thrown at me right now.
How many people of color have been president?
One.
Mm-hmm.
One.
Interesting. And from that very brilliant black man, we swung so hard right that we ended up with an orange and idiot. That is how racist this fucking country is. We see racism and white supremacy throughout every aspect of society, be it in medicine, where black women are 21% more likely to unalive during childbirth and during pregnancy, or whether it be
And this, even like thinking about this stat, what do you think it proves? Black people in general have worse health. Are we also going to blame the fact that they're more susceptible to sickle cell anemia on white privilege? These stats they don't make the argument that they think they do. It's like people on the left look at any disparity in outcomes and they automatically assume that it's evidence of racism. That is not necessarily true. And you have to make an argument that goes beyond asserting statistics and not connecting them to your conclusion.
The fact that there's still a pervasive idea that black people don't feel the same type of pain as white folk. There's also
By the way, I'm genuinely curious. How many of you guys believe that black people don't feel the same kind of pain as white people do? Like, do you think if you go punch or harm someone of African-American descent, do you think that they don't feel it, that it's a different type of pain? I personally have never heard that. I think that is probably something that's peddled in very far left echo chambers, but yeah, I don't know. Maybe you guys have heard of that. I haven't.
Racism and the supremacy that comes with people having quote unquote white voices when it comes to their work. That is a huge thing that we see constantly. And yeah, Everett, I know Kamala Harris was president for 25 minutes, but that doesn't count. We're not going to count that. We're not going to let them have that. We see that white supremacy is prevalent throughout every aspect of our lives. Here in the United States, white folk are less likely to be harmed by the police officers and more likely to receive lighter sentencing for the same crimes. So we see it in our justice system, our medical system, our
So I want to make one thing clear. I'm not here to deny every single thing that the left says with regard to these notions. I actually do believe that there probably are issues with regard to police and how they interact with people from various non-white communities. I'm sure that that's true. I'm sure that comes as a consequence of their interaction with these communities. And the reality is they associate these communities, rightfully so, with having higher crime rates, with resisting more often, with, things spiraling out of control more often. If we're going to deny that these things happen, then I really don't know what world we're living in. We can say on the one hand, perhaps there are some things that we can change with policing, but we don't need to jump all the way to the conclusion that white people are privileged in life because some cops are racist. Maybe even more cops are racist towards black people than are racist towards white people. I'm willing to grant that. But that doesn't change the fact, again, that it's easier to get into positions of power as a black person. You do not need to jump over as high of a bar, so to speak. You don't need to get as high of an LSAT score. You don't need to get as high of an MCAT score. You don't need to get as high as an ACT or as high of an ACT or SAT score. And these things matter. These schools, these high-level institutions are the elite producing factories. And when you go through there, you have opportunities that are open to you that are not open to some other kid. And so, there are arguments to be made that, maybe white people have access on average to more test prep. And so maybe there should be a little bit of a discrepancy, but the discrepancy is large between black and white scores on the LSAT, for example. And that's not fair to the poor white kid who can't afford test prep, who he's lumped in with these other people on account of race. And he now has to cross a higher bar than someone who grew up in the same conditions as him. That's not fair. The left has a problem with tribalism. It just cuts the opposite direction to the rights. The right loves to worship, far right rather, loves to worship whiteness and they're white nationalist, whatever. But then you go to the left and they're just the opposite. Then they're the negation of that. They don't like white people. They don't think that we should be a white nation, or they affirm ideas like white privilege, but they can't actually make the argument as to why white privilege exists. How about we stop cutting along these racial lines so hard? How about we focus more on the individual merit of a person and stop grouping people on these broad generalizations? So again, I want to say, even though I come off a little hostile here, I don't disagree with every single thing that they said. But, saying that some cops are racist, again, is a far cry from saying that systemic white privilege exists.
Labor system, we see it in schools, we see it in every aspect of life. So yes, white privilege exists.
Okay, so about 80% of that was just assertions. There were like 3 statistics that you cited. One of them was the unalive rate for Black women, I guess, during childbirth. Why does that prove the
33%? 33.
And you can see they're very defensive. They don't like that I didn't just accept it. They don't like that I called out the disconnect between their premises and their argument. They just start screaming instantly. And that's basically how the rest of this goes.
3% maternal mortality rate for Black women in this country.
Sure,
12% for white women, because they don't believe that Black women feel the same amount of pain. They're also not believed on as often as white women are when it comes to their pain. We see this constantly, and it's not a class thing. Well, I know that that's normally what comes after that. We know it's not a class thing because some of the most famous women in the world who are Black, be it Beyonce or Serena Williams.
And at this point, I was just trying to get her to stop because she was going on tirades, like just very, very long rants, and I couldn't get out a sentence. But that's the tactics these people play. They're not here for a dialectical exchange. They're here to rant.
Williams, those two both almost unalive during childbirth, and they're some of the richest women in the world. So we know that their only difference, hang on there, bud, you're not going to ask me a question and then talk. I don't give a fuck. I'm a fucking co-host here, buddy.
There's no argument.
If you're going to, then leave.
Are you going to give
yes, because it counts.
How about the
because
fact
it counts.
That Black people get
because
into universities
it counts.
With lower LSAT scores, lower ACT
no, they
scores,
don't.
lower scores?
No, they don't.
Yes, they
source it. Source it.
Go to
source
law school
it.
Data right now. Go to law school.
Source it.
And look at that.
Source it.
Look how quiet it is. Wow, he must have got really owned. No, it was the fact that I didn't realize that I was muted. I was going on to tell her that you can look at LSAC, the Law School Admissions Council. You can look at lsd.law, which is self-reported data, but it's like the largest source of data that you can find. Law school applicants use it all the time because it's as useful as data that you can get for most of these things because LSAC isn't constantly releasing data. Law school transparency, same thing. You can look at the URM differential for people admitted to various law schools. And again, I've already said why this matters, but I want to make one more comment. This debate style that these leftists utilize is just odious. The interruptions, the not allowing your opponent to talk, the degrading language. It is not the kind of thing that's going to win people over to our side. And I understand these people, I guess they just don't care about that. If you don't agree with them on every single thing instantly, well, then you're just an uneducated racist. They start calling me a racist. Yeah, that's not actually how you win. And that's why we're losing. And that's why people like Nick, because he is able to acknowledge realities. He is charismatic. He is able to spin a tale and to get people to believe what he is saying. But here on the left, I guess we're just supposed to scream at people. I don't think so. I think that is not no way to win. And that's one of the reasons I'm making this video. Again, I will say one more time, I'm not saying that I was much better, but really, it is the case that these people were using this debate style the entire time. And if they would have been courteous and willing to engage in a more respectful dialogue, I would have done the same. But with these people, you can't do that. You kind of just have to speak over them or be a little bit blunt, or else they just degrade you, literally. I mean, they were degrading like the previous 5 people before me. They were going in on these people. You should have heard. It's pretty crazy.
Because I can tell you right now that the only reason that those things happened was because of affirmative action, which made it so that that wasn't a consideration in those admission practices. However, white folks...
Affirmative action did... not actually sure, she didn't formulate her claim very well, but I assume that she's saying that the discrepancies were caused by affirmative action. But we see even after affirmative action was taken out, we still see the URM differentials persist. There are some places where we saw the proportion of black students, specifically I think Yale and undergrad, decrease. It still didn't decrease to the point at which they would be represented equally to their scores, but it decreased. But in other places like law school admissions, we really didn't see a decrease at all. The URM differentials for the year 2024 to 2025 were the same as the admission cycle before. So this claim is completely unsubstantiated. It appears that they are continuing to find ways to admit people in on the basis of race without saying that it's on the basis of race.
Went and got pissy about that, then used Asian folk as a front in order to strip that from us as a whole. The people who benefited most from affirmative action were actually white women,
if you're just going
not
to
people
talk
of
over
color.
and not make an argument, then why don't you just admit that you have no basis for this claim? It's another.
Good.
And there's the mute again.
Golly, Miss Molly.
I will mute
All of those
Single
things that I
higher
said,
level-
which were
No,
stats.
I will mute you every time, dude. You're just
And you can hear, this is what they were doing to other people. They have like 4 people on. There's the white knight, male feminist, you know, the type. And then there's the lesbian couple. And they would mute the people and scream at them. It's just nonsense.
going on. You don't let them finish. You have to let them finish what they're saying.
How ironic. I don't let them finish? Wow. Yeah.
Under 10 minutes. How about that?
And I said, try to keep it under 10 minutes.
Try to suck my entire dick. How about that?
Good one.
These people are, very civilized, right? And that's not a racial comment. It's actually a political comment. The far left is pretty odious. I'll be honest. They're honestly less courteous, less respectful than most people on the far right.
Yeah, I know.
So are you going to go? Or are you going to... Come on here. Let's hear
Anyway,
the cumulative case
we
for white
we
privilege.
know that white privilege exists
That's an
because we
assertion.
see it every day.
Where? You're just asserting it. That's not how an argument works. That's called a circular
Cool.
argument. White privilege exists because we see it. Where is it?
Yeah,
You've
white
given me
privilege
one
exists
stat.
because white people don't get. Okay, you want to know what it is? Here, there was a study that was done.
And then they say, you want to know what it is? Almost like, yeah, I've been asking for the last 10 minutes. And instead you just keep saying white privilege exists because it exists. The definition of circularity, by the way.
On people getting pulled over, specifically black folk being pulled over. Black folk were pulled over less often at night. Do you want to know why that was?
Why?
And at this point, I was just kind of done. I'm familiar with the study. I was willing to just grant it. And so I say, you'll see, I say, suppose the veracity, suppose it's true. It doesn't build your case.
The study found it's because that the cops couldn't see inside to see what color the person was that was driving.
Suppose the veracity of that
So they got
claim.
pulled
Let's
over
say-
less at night.
Yeah, okay. Suppose the veracity of that claim. Let's say that we have 2 giant facts stacked up. One,
My
police
fucking God,
are
Phil
more
Brooks.
likely to target black people who, by the way,
And you can see they don't listen. They are already mad.
commit more crime. And
They are.
but
No, they don't. No, they... Stop
It's
speaking,
actually-
Mark. No, the fuck they don't. You're
That
not going to
would be factually
1350
wrong.
here. That's a hard line.
Yes.
That would
Are
be
you joking?
factual.
You're right. I'm not going to 1350. I'm going to 650. No, but seriously, I mean, to deny that they, and you might say, well, they maybe thought you meant in absolute terms. No, I clarify right after proportionality, you'll see. And they do not believe that black people commit more crime, proportionally speaking. That's nonsensical. They do. I'm not saying that it's because they're black. I'm not saying that it's because they're genes. I'm not saying any of that. I'm telling you facts so that we can have common standards from which we can develop our positions. But, they're not interested in that.
Factually incorrect. and
That
that's
is
why you're
not
getting
true.
muted.
proportionally commit far more
Factually,
crime than
factually.
They do
incorrect.
not. They actually commit far less
proportionally
crime.
speaking, they commit
They commit far less crime. They commit far less crime
what
than
proportionality
their
is?
white counterparts. I do, and I know that study
you're
per
claiming
capita, that
no,
table
it's not a
43,
study. It's
Mark,
not-
table.
And then they say study, and I correct, it's not study. Like, yeah, you can talk about FBI crime statistics, but as I mentioned later, it's not just FBI crime statistics. In every country in which there is a black population, they commit more crime than the non-black population. If you have a black minority in the UK, they commit more crime than the white population of the UK. Same thing in across Europe. Same thing in Latin America. And so it's not FBI crime statistics. It's the statistics captured wherever there does exist a black minority. And, you know, they're going to go on to say that, you know, there are arrest rates. And really, black people get let off 3 times as much as white people. And my simple response to that is you don't even really need to get into the data. The difference between 6 and 50 is more than, there's a greater than 3 times difference. And so you can say, sure, well, I'll just suppose it's true that they, you know, get off at 3 times the rate. And so, but that still wouldn't get you to 50%. You would need to get to 50% for that fact to make up the discrepancy and for there to be a proportional amount of crime committed.
43?
Hold on.
No,
hold on.
table
Kiki, hold
43
on.
of the
It's
FBI
data.
crime
It's not a
stats.
study.
Go ahead, Nemo.
Okay. I was gonna say, do we want to let Zena up for subject matter expert on this?
Either Z.
And then they bring on an ostensible subject matter expert. So you ask where I get the data from, and I just go with any of them. You can go with the FBI. It doesn't really matter. You can go with any place, and it's true. But I say that, and then she starts talking about CP, which is very weird. You'll see.
Zena or Jay, whichever one is here who is ready to rumble.
Zena's been like screaming.
And I will say to this person who comes up, I think it's performative, but they were nice, and I was a little bit combative with them just because I was already, you know, primed with these previous 2 people. But if that person, Zena, I think her name is, if she actually genuinely is, you know, a kind person who doesn't do these sort of debate tactics, well, then I do apologize for being combative and rude.
Yeah. All right. All right. You're freed. Hi, Zena.
Zena, you have to. Oh, you good.
I am free. So, Mark, where did you get your where did you get your stats from?
Where did I get my stats from? How about the FBI? How about FBI crime reporting?
Are we talking about?
How about arrest stats? How about arrest?
Fucking knew it, but table 43 every
How about
time.
arrest statistics at the state and federal level?
Table 43.
How about data that comes from
Arrest
not only
statistics.
And then
No. Mark, arrest.
And then they start cutting me off again to make the point, which doesn't matter, which they say that, you know, they are let off at 3 times the rate. Again, it wouldn't make up for the difference because the difference is more than 3 times.
Statistics are not the
but
same as
every
conviction
country in which
statistics.
there is a black minority.
Hi,
you see that-
Mark,
Also-
shut your fucking cockwasher.
You're absolutely not
You
going to
wanna
talk
dispute
over a
the
black
veracity-
woman in this space. You're absolutely not going to talk over a black woman in this space. So shush.
hilarious.
I just did, but go on.
Okay, hold on, Mark. Wait a minute. Hold on, because I didn't come up here being disrespectful to you, man. Give me a second. I just want to know, why?
It is sort of a good cop, bad cop thing they got going on, though. It's like, shut your explicit washer. I'm not going to say it. And then the other person's like, hey, I'm being kind to you, buddy. It's like, yeah, no.
Why do you think that black people commit more of the crime, right? Is it because that 71% of the CP that is distributed and around the world comes from 31% of the population in the United States, or what?
I mean, she asked a question, so that's kind of how this works. I answer. So CP is causing
Shut
black people to
up,
commit
Mark.
more crimes? Is that
Oh
your
my
claim
God.
now? That CP is causing them to go out and rob stores? Really?
Mark, are you racist?
No, I'm not racist, but you're denying basic facts.
I'm denying that 31% of the population in the United States distributes 71% of the world's CP, child
I
porn.
never disputed the veracity of this claim. Let's go back to the
I
very
also-
beginning. You made a claim with regards to white privilege, but
So
the
then-
fact
so-
of the matter is,
So then if
black
you're-
people.
And then they mute again. You can't make your case. So just to recap that little part, I mean, she brings up CP statistics, and I get a little bit tongue-in-cheek, but I say, so CP is making them rob stores? Because, I mean, again, it's just a disconnected statistic. That's these people's favorite thing to do is throw out a statistic because they think it makes them sound smart, but it doesn't actually further their argument because there's no clear connection between the statistic, which is serving as a premise, and the conclusion, which the premise is meant to support. And then, you know, they start obviously getting explicit and muting again. But again, there's just no argument to be made here. There's no argument from their side. I came in here initially asking, what is the argument for white privilege? And I got a bunch of assertions. Then I got a bunch of, well, not a bunch. I got like 3 disconnected statistics. And the second I start to interrogate the structure of the argument, the connections between the premises and the conclusions, which, by the way, are the things that give strength to an argument, they start cussing and screaming and muting. And it's really just recalcitrant, childlike behavior.
So
Black
then if-
people do not commit more
Universities
crimes.
with
Black
lower
people are
scores They are.
I'm gonna fucking kick him. Mark, shut your fucking racist mouth. The fact of the matter is, you're...
And it's like, if I'm racist, everyone's racist. I'm racist because I make a tongue-in-cheek comment. I'm racist because I talk about crime statistics that exist. There's just nothing left to say to these kinds of people. If I'm racist, fine. You know, I've made like 10 videos debunking Nick Fuentes or race realism or these various topics, but because I am not going to acquiesce to the ridiculous notion that black people don't commit more crime, I'm racist. Why don't you just kick every person out of the left until it's, you know, you, your lesbian partner, and your white knight standing side by side while everyone else goes on about their business? Because that is basically the trajectory that you're laying with this kind of attitude, with this unwillingness to recognize facts. I mean, it's nonsensical. It really is.
quoting the table 43 of the FBI crime stats, and that's not actually what that table says. All that table says is what the arrest records are. Those arrest records do not represent convictions. Black folk are exonerated at, what, 3 times the rate of white people? It's almost as if white people actually commit crimes and are convicted more often, and black folk are arrested for crimes that they did not.
And so what I'm trying to say, but I'm being muted, is that 3 times doesn't get you from 6 to 50, which is what you would need. It also doesn't get you even from 13 to 50, which is, you know, maybe at best what you could say you would need. And so it's just impertinent. Maybe it's a step. If it's all true, maybe it's a step towards, you know, combating the conclusion, but it's certainly not crossing the chasm.
Commit.
50, is that 6?
I'm just going to continue muting him because honestly, his racist vitriol is making me feel gross.
Cuckoo bananas. Yeah, it's crazy because it's like I don't know where the white tea privilege is. Well, if you don't know where the white tea privilege is, why don't you sit down in the comments and find out where it's at? Because a lot of the times it comes from when y'all are just
make the case.
Y'all don't know what the heck y'all are talking about. Y'all think that because, you know, especially y'all white tea man.
W. Thomas. W.
And then she just gets into racism, saying that white tea men like me, I guess, you know, we don't understand. We won't just sit down in the comments and learn. Hey, white man, why don't you just sit down and learn? Listen to them make baseless assertions and arguments which don't actually hold up, and let them degrade you because your ancestors did bad things. Therefore, you are not only racist, because all white people are racist, but you're morally repugnant, subhuman, and you do not deserve the breath which you take in. But that's that. That was the argument. They kicked me out right after that. And again, it's like, dude, if I'm racist, I'm sorry, but your camp of non-racist is just very small, and it's ever shrinking with this attitude. I am not racist. I am a liberal. I argue all the time against notions that are what I believe to be, you know, truly racist. I believe myself to care about merit, to care about individuality. I'm a liberal. I don't care about these tribal lines that the right or the left want to draw. I care about maximizing progress as a society. I want a clean society. I want a safe society. I want to acknowledge common realities such that we can have conversations, such that we can work towards a common truth, a better society, a better world. But these people don't want that. They want TikTok dunks, and it's toxic. And it needs to be called out in the same manner that I call out people on the far right. These far leftists need to be called out too, because they're honestly on par. But that's that. I hope you guys enjoyed the video. If you did, be sure to leave a like, subscribe. Let me know what you think in the comments. I'm sorry if you're on the left and this video made you mad. Just know that I am a liberal. But if any of you guys want to debate or discuss any topic, just let me know. See you.